Kill Complacency, a podcast that inspires growth and intentionality and helps you overcome your greatest obstacle.
So my guest today is a guy named Will Davis. He's out of Colorado and very similar worldview to me. Homeschools, bigger family, loves Jesus, and he's a real estate investor. So Will, could you tell us more about yourself? If someone is meeting you for the first time, how would that intro go?
Hey, Marty, thanks. Yeah, great to be here. So first and foremost, I always just tell people I'm a pastor's kid. So I did no intention whatsoever of ending up in business, which is where I am. And so I'm from Austin, Texas originally, which is where my family is. My dad started a church in 1993, which he recently just retired from after 30 something years. And so I grew up there. And so I'm Will Davis III. He's Will Davis Jr. There was a Will Davis Sr. So I shared a name. And I just grew up in that church and I loved it. But part of that is everybody rubs you on the head and says, you're going to be a pastor just like your daddy. You're going to have a big church someday. So that gets programmed into you from a very young age. And I was like, okay, I guess that's what I'm going to do. So I just went through my childhood years and school years believing that. And I've done a lot of ministry. I did ministry through college and after college, lots of different capacities, nonprofit, worship leader. And then in 2016, after I was married, we had moved to Denver, my wife and I was still doing ministry, kind of working on a ministry job locally here, or expecting a ministry job locally here. And things weren't just clicking. And so somebody had said, you should try business. It seems like you'd be good at it. And I just was so offended by that because do you know who I am? I'm a pastor's kid. I do ministry. But that's what ended up happening. I got my real estate license in 2016 with no intention whatsoever of doing it or staying in it. It was just a stopgap. And 10 years later, here we are. And so, yeah, for the past 10 years, I've been in real estate, helping people buy and sell homes in Denver and a few other places as well. And what I do now, it's kind of the next phase is what I'm calling financial independence for families. Mm-hmm. What I've noticed helping a lot of first-time home buyers and move-up buyers is people were able to get in. People that were doing everything right were able to get in, but just barely. And so I started looking at the financial education and the system we're taught and going, what's wrong here? So that's Cliff Notes on how we ended up where we are.
First off, and maybe I shouldn't go here, but I'm gonna. Do you ever listen to Brandon Turner's Better Life podcast?
I'm vaguely familiar with who Brandon is. I've never listened to the yeah.
Okay. When we get done, I'm going to send you not his latest, but he has one. And everything you said, I thought, Will's got to listen to this.
Okay.
It's about ministry and business.
Yeah.
And he talks about kind of what you struggled, or maybe you didn't struggle through it, but that maybe I should ask you about that. How did that decision go from ministry-minded to business-minded?
Yeah, we're going to get deep here pretty quick. But so the reason, the honest answer of why did I struggle at all with that? Why did it take me years, maybe even decades to see that I would like or enjoy or be good at business in any way? It was really just a personal kind of, I don't know if you'd call it a wound or an insecurity. But I think it was an area where my relationship with the Lord had not grown enough yet. And so because what happened is people would say you should do business, it would make me angry. There was a lot of anger. Mm-hmm. It felt that people weren't saying this, but what I heard them saying was, you're never going to be anything like your father. You're not good enough or qualified enough to do ministry. So it was almost kind of this like, I was hearing it through a bad frame and bad context, but really the insecurity in me was like, man, I just don't know if God loves me, or I don't know if God loves me unless I do good things. And if I do bad things, maybe he don't. And really, when you got all the way down to it, it was like, I want to do ministry because I know God cares about the church and maybe he'll love me if I do what he cares about. Yeah. So it's painful for me to even say that now, but that's absolutely
talk to me about coming to that conclusion. How did you conclude that about yourself? Because that's big.
Yeah. To be honest, like there was just a time a couple years into marriage, I think you're trying to figure the other person out
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately that translates into trying to figure yourself out,
Have to.
because it's like, what even is going on here? And so it's really easy to analyze the other person, but like then it's like, well, you got to analyze yourself. So I started analyzing myself, and I was seeing a counselor, and some of in counseling, just some anger things would come up. And so so why are you angry? And then there's a wound under that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was through the process of that. It was through the process of getting married. It was, who even am I, and why am I this way? Because you don't examine yourself ever super hard until you get married.
Yes.
Until you have to explain yourself to somebody else. I don't know why I'm like that. So that was a big piece of it, was really just it was just a revealing of that wound where my faith had not progressed yet, of like, I'm not sure God will love me unless I perform at a certain level. And that's just
Mm-hmm.
absolutely not the gospel. That's not the truth of any of it. But that was a factor for me at the time.
Well, and I think, to be fair, I mean, maybe you're over that, but I think that we can continue to struggle with that, right? Because
Totally.
God loves us, and we feel like we need to somehow earn that. But it is a lie that we believe, and maybe a lie that Satan feeds us in regards to keeping us in that mindset.
Yeah. I think it is. I think it absolutely is. And especially for those of us that are predisposed to any kind of service or ministry, it can be very
Mhm.
powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely going to say that podcast because you
Okay.
will love it.
Great.
So that's good stuff. Talk to me about homeschooling. Has that always been?
Well, so we've got 4 kids. Let's see, 7, 5, 3, and 1.
Mm.
And so I guess it was 3 or 4 years ago, my oldest, we were like, okay, it's time we got to start looking at kindergartens. And so for us, we weren't really interested in the public schools where we live. And so there's there's Montessori, there's private. There's a
Sure.
great private school here that we looked at, a bunch of our friends go to, and we walked through it. There was really nothing wrong with it. My wife and I's convictions were just a little bit like, why don't we there was just a handful of things we were thinking through, like, why don't we just try homeschooling? And so that's kind of what happened. And it's absolutely my wife who runs point on that, and she's phenomenal at it. But yeah, so we homeschool our oldest 2. Our youngest 2 aren't school age yet, but
Sure.
that's our plan. And we just realized we love our kids. We love being a family. My
Mhm.
wife, as a little girl, her dream was to have a family and have a bunch of kids. And so we just started doing the math on how much time we would get back with our kids
Mhm.
if we're together, and if we're doing it from home, and the opportunities we would have that maybe we wouldn't have if they were in school and doing after school sports and all these different things. And that's not wrong or bad for anybody who wants to do that. But for us, it was just very clear, like, ooh, this really, you talk about killing complacency and intentionality.
Mhm.
For us, our values and intentionality, that was something that was very incentivizing. And we're like, we have to try this.
Yeah. We've homeschooled for, I don't know, maybe 15 years.
Yeah.
And it was interesting when we started, I was a youth pastor in Malta, Montana, and the school system in that little town is everything. I mean, everything. And people couldn't believe, and we kind of moved when our oldest was 7, but people couldn't believe that we would not public school.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was hard. There's way more people here at home.
Yeah.
I mean, it's completely different.
Sure.
Completely different.
Yeah.
Well, that's neat. Well, that makes you unusual.
Yeah.
Buck the norm there. So you went from doing ministry to doing real estate. Now you're homeschooling. Talk to me about your transition into financial independence for families.
Well, I think I realized at a very young age that I wanted to be the way I would have told you as a kid. Is I didn't want to have financial issues controlling me in any way, or limiting options, or making things a certain way. I wanted what people would call today as financial independence. And I remember doing a nearlyweds class before when we were engaged, and there's like 1 hour where they talk to you about finances and all the traditional stuff. And there was this pyramid of like investing, and you start with this and you go to this, and you do your S&P 500 index fund, then you do this and this. And at the top of the pyramid was speculative investing. And I was just and he never talked about it, but I was just beyond curious and engaged by what even is that? What could that be? So there was clues all the way along. When the business got going and we were starting to have really healthy income, I maxed out really hard on what I call 90s financial advice. So I did all the stuff you're supposed to do. No debt, S&P 500 index fund in the Roth IRA, backdoor IRA, brokerage accounts, whatever. I did it all. And very quickly got to the end of the line there and I was like, so just looking at these accounts, you can't touch it till later. And then I was also like, it's there and it's liquid, but if I sell it, it's going to stop growing. I got to pay taxes. And I was just like, is this it? Is this just what you do? And then I was also aware people are financially independent before 65. And I was like, what's going on here? So it started a couple years of journey of just what are they not telling us? I mean, there's more to it than this. And so I did books and podcasts and conferences and high ticket mastermind events and started sitting at tables with people and learning. And so I started studying, and obviously Rich Dad, Poor Dad was huge when I read it. This idea that, hey, you want cash flow. The world runs off cash flow, right? You got cash flow and you got appreciation. You can live without one, but not the other.
Yeah.
And the more I looked at it, the more I just couldn't unsee it. And so I was also just increasingly aware of how unhelpful, to put it kindly, 90s financial advice is today for the younger generations that are having families right now. Because like just last year, the average age of first-time home buyer went up to 40 years old, and everything's just including buying a home, which is asset ownership, which is part of the American dream, is increasingly unaffordable. And so in my experience as a realtor, I saw families coming to me that had everything buttoned up and all together. They had no debt, good income, safe, steady paychecks. They'd been saving. And even though they were acing the 90s financial advice test, they were barely able to get a house. And a lot of times it was less of a house than they wanted. And that created tension of, okay, why is it that they're acing the test and it's not working? Why? And today the tension's full blown. In 2016, it was just emerging. But why did what worked for previous generations no longer work for today's generations? What's going on here? And so this morbid curiosity and fascination with that took off, and I started building out a method and a system. Okay, how could somebody that's starting off today, maybe they just got married, maybe they want to have kids, they have kids, how can they get ahead? How can they get, first of all, financially independent before 65? And how can they actually get ahead today and not struggle to keep up, which is more of what's happening. And so that's where that led.
Lots of questions in there. My first question, I'm just curious. What was the median home price in Denver in 2016?
Median?
I mean, what were you selling houses for?
Yeah, a first-time home buyer, it wasn't uncommon for us to go look at like a 2-bedroom, 1 to 2 bed townhome for $225 to $250 in 2016.
And what's that same house now?
$425, $450.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's a specific HOA I'm thinking of, honestly. So yeah, it's almost double. And then that's included, and that doesn't factor in the fact that rates were awesome back then and not, and a little bit more challenging today.
Okay, that was mostly curiosity.
Yeah. Average home price is much higher. I'd say our average is probably around 700-ish today in the metro area.
Okay, now, next question. I'm one of your clients and I'm coming to you. I want to buy a house. What's your first piece of advice to me as far as this financial independence?
Yeah, it depends on who you are. I like to get,
you don't know anything about me. I didn't give you anything.
It depends on who they are. I like to get to know them. So I'm completely 100% by referral. So I don't advertise. You're not going to find me on a billboard or a park bench, right? Everything is relationships. So everybody I work with is either someone I know or a friend of somebody I know. So that creates a lot of continuity in terms of who I work with. But I think the first thing I generally am going to try to do is, in terms of just advice, other than getting to know them, is I'm going to try to identify limiting beliefs or a belief that's just not helpful and gently break it down. So I would call it calibration. So some people come in thinking you have to have 20% down and I need to wait a couple years. So I'm going to try to help them understand you need 3 to 5% down. You don't need 20% down. The math's never going to work if you wait until you have 20% down, because it's a moving target, the goalposts move. Some people come in and, like a lot of times, especially when it got competitive, I would have to, hey, we're not going to look at anything. Yeah, so your max price is 400. So we're not looking at anything that's 350 or above. Like we have to start, because we're going to have to go up. We're going to have appraisal gaps. So anything that they came in with a preconceived idea, that was not going to be helpful to them or get in their way. I'm just going to try to gently deconstruct whatever limiting issues there are.
Okay, after limiting beliefs, where does finances come in? Does that play into it? Or is it mostly beliefs?
No, yeah. And I would also say that it was a lot of times people were disappointed. Oh, I can afford 400, but I can't look up to three. I got to be 50 or under. Or I would tell them too, hey, listen, we go see 4 houses. You give each one a letter grade, A, B, C, D. Your A house has been out of your price range for 10 years. Your B house has been out of your price range for 5 years. But listen, or maybe it wasn't the B, maybe the B house is still in the running. And I would just say, you're probably realistically going to end up looking at B and C houses and help them understand that's still very worth their time and their investment. Because if you, and I'll explain it as a train, if you get, let's imagine we're at a train station, train's about to depart the station, right?
Yeah.
While it's sitting still, you can get on the train. When it's moving, like you can jog up next to it and get on. Once it's gone, though, it's gone. And that's what I was telling people this in 2016. That's very much what's happened. There are people that can't afford to buy houses anymore. So I was like, just get on the train. Go buy your first home. If it's not your forever home, it's most first time home buyers are doing 3 to 5 years in the first time home. Something's going to change. Your job's going to change. You're going to move. But all of a sudden, you've got the equity's grown, which is going to allow you to move up. So if you get in, even if you get on the caboose, you can still move up once you're on the train.
Sure.
If you don't ever get on the train. So that was a big piece of it. And financially, we would look at what was realistic, what was comfortable, and then back into what their options were and help quantify that.
That's good. I've been talking to a friend of mine recently about financial literature or literacy. At what point do we need to start teaching that to our kids? And that's specific. I guess I missed that. Specifically, that's what he wants to do. Is he wants to create a class for, and he's a realtor, but he wants to teach his realtor friends, kids, about finances because he feels like they're not getting into school, and then they go to college, they start off behind the wheel, and they can never catch up. So at what point do we need to focus on kids, I guess?
It's such a major, massive piece of your life for your whole life. Like it is so, it touches everything. It's so important. It affects how many kids you have, where you live, what kind of house you buy, what kind of house you don't buy, what your retirement or non-retirement. It affects everything. And we just don't allocate any time to it. And then I would argue the financial education that is out there, 90s financial advice, was for the 90s. And it's obsolete. So I think young, kindergarten, first grade, 6 or 7-year-olds, I think basic concepts is great starting at that age. And don't sit them down and teach them the math. Make it a game or help them understand it in the way they can understand and lay the groundwork. Certainly by junior high school, I think that's a good time to really start building some of the bigger things in and asking them questions about who do you want to be and what do you want to do and what does this look like, and understand what that means for the math of income or whatever. And so, yeah, I think it's absolutely. So just recently they turned the food pyramid upside down. I don't know if you saw that, but yeah, the traditional food pyramid that we all grew up with, like they turned it upside down and said, this is backwards. I would do that with the everything we're doing financially. I would do that and say, we just need to start this way earlier and be having conversations. I don't know. I don't know if there's a too early time.
Okay. Yeah. And I agree 100%. I'm in real estate. Sometimes we're cleaning out a house. I love taking my boys because I get to spend time with them, but I also pay them. And then I take them to the bank and I give them a check and they're learning. Like they put some of it into savings. They cash it out. My boys love coins. So sometimes they'll get $50 in nickels and they'll sort through those nickels and look for nickels in the 40s and 50s. And then they'll sell those on eBay and they'll make a little bit of money, cash in their nickels at face value. But I've tried to actively do it. So banks are familiar to them because I didn't grow up. We were scared of the bank because we were getting overdrafts.
Yeah, totally.
But I agree. Like my boys, I feel are way ahead of most people in regards to finances because they're around it.
They absolutely are. And I think that's great. They'll remember that for the rest of their lives, going to the bank with dad and digging through nickels. And it's teaching them a lot more than just sorting through coins.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good. So what is a story, Will, a success story of someone that you've helped learn about financial independence, getting into a home or something like that?
Yeah. Right now, so We really have started the financial independence more recently, and it's not directly connected to helping people buy and sell homes, but I think real estate is a big piece of it. So right now what we're doing is we're doing a challenge online once a month, like that's on Zoom for it's about
Mhm.
4 days, and we do 1 hour a day. And day one is the problem with 90s financial advice. And we're just explaining to people, hey, you're frustrated that what worked for them is not working for you. Here's why. Number two is day two is the solution. Day three is implementation. And then day four is a vision for the future and for your family. The biggest outcome we're seeing after we do those challenges is people's entire framework for understanding
Mm,
life and how they think about money is completely jacked up in the best way possible and shifted.
mm,
And so they're backing up and re-looking at everything that's on the table, so to speak, everything they've committed to and they're obligated to, and becoming much more intentional about what's in their life on purpose and what's not in their life on purpose.
mm,
And where do we want to end up? And wow, you're telling me we can be financially independent long before 65. Why would we
mhm,
not do that? And what could that mean for our family? And then all the basic, simple choices people make. Do we sell the house or keep the house or rent the house? And is my primary income going to be W 2 through this job? All of that, they start looking at with fresh eyes,
mm,
and it starts unlocking creativity in people. And for the first time, unfortunately, but also fortunately, they start dreaming about what could be possible for them and their family. And so specifically on the homeschooling front, there's people that would like to homeschool, but you got to go down to one income to do that generally.
Oh, yeah.
There's people that would like to be a stay-at-home, work from home. That's certain jobs will and won't do that. And then there's just, oh, we've always thought about moving out and buying land and doing life this way, but it's never really been an option. So all of a sudden they're dreaming for the first time and then laying groundwork, beginning to think about groundwork that'll get them there instead of just doing the status quo and accepting it. So they're killing complacency, I guess you could say.
Sure. Somewhere I had this question. I'll just wing it. Do you think that if someone were to focus on finances, that's probably the needle that moves, starts it. You talk about dreams and all this. Okay, maybe I should say this. If you were to give somebody the ability to set goals or encourage someone to set goals January 1st in one area, would it be finances or would it be something else as far as, because it sounds like to me, Will, just listening to you, when you give people the financial IQ that they've been looking for or the ability to dream, it opens up their world to them.
But yeah, I think it does because everything is in the box. Your
Mhm.
whole life is in the box. When you go to school, you don't get to study what you want to study. They have a predetermined box of what you're going to study. You're going to study chemistry or pre-cal. Why in God's green earth, if you're not going to NASA, do you need to know pre-cal? And I'm not saying stuff we study in school is necessarily bad, but it's not about who you are as a person, who you're made to be, and what your natural gifts and skills are, and where you could best serve and what interests you. It's about, no, just do this predetermined thing. And so and then you do the same thing with a job. You're like, you go on LinkedIn, you look at, or Indeed, and you look at salaries and job titles, and you're not saying, how could I serve? So there's a different 90s financial advice teaches you to look for a job. What I'm going to call the family first method, we're really trying to teach people to look for customers.
I just wanted to thank you guys for listening to the end. In closing, I just wanted to add that if this message resonates with you, if it aligns with your values and something in it today triggered something, then you can also look me up on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. We are really trying to help people live more intentional lives to kill the complacency with which they have subscribed to. I know there's many ways which I get sucked in all the time. So if this is beneficial, follow me there.